Hello, I'm Dr. Ralph Hughes, and in this video lecture, I discuss perception as it relates to ethics. Understand that perception shapes reality. Perception is reality for a few. When looking at ethics, it is simply defined from the Greek word ethos, such as customs, conduct, or character. We also look at the values and morals within a society. So ethics truly come from societal norms. I do understand that most people, when they look at ethics, they have a tendency of looking at the biblical sense of ethics or the biblical definition of ethics, which is the study of right versus wrong. That is from the biblical sense. And truly, we want to look at ethics from many, many perspectives. The reason is because ethics is not only viewed, is also defined and applied very differently in vast cultures. Also, even in the United States of America, when you have people born and raised in the United States, thus American, depending on the socioeconomics, they may look at ethics differently. Let's look at this from a deontological perspective. Deontology is defined as the ethics of study of right and wrong and the morality of the choices individuals make. To define this a little further, we look at a duty and obligation as it refers to deontology. So again, deontology is the study of duty and obligation as it relates to various cultures. Let's say, for example, you have a young man, approximately 15 years of age, and he has two siblings, ages 8 and 10, that he has to care for. Now, the father may be in prison. Actually, the father is in prison at this point in time, serving a life sentence. The mother is on drugs. She's in the street. No one can find where she is. The 15-year-old young man then has to make a decision how he is going to care for his siblings. He knows that if he doesn't have any family members to turn to, that's first and foremost. So because he has no family members to turn to, he has no friends that he actually can share this information with. The information being that he's at home with two younger siblings. The reason is because he's afraid that if anyone finds out that he is at home caring for his two younger siblings, that DHS, Department of Children and Families, or DCF in some places as it's called, will actually go to the house. They would take all the children, remove the children from the home, and place them in foster care. And they run the risk of being separated. So, because of that, this young man, number one, decides not to let anyone know, not to inform anyone that he is in fact caring for his younger siblings. Number two, he's hungry. He has no money. His siblings are hungry as well. But the 15-year-old male does the very best he possibly can by ensuring that his siblings are taken care of in terms of having food to eat, and also that they are bathed on an frequently, daily, in the morning, at night, before they go to bed, making sure that their homework is done and completed and done properly. This young man decides because he has no money and he has to care for his siblings because they're hungry, he goes to a corner pizzeria. He orders a pizza pie, knowing that he has no money. So he receives the pizza pie, and when he receives a pizza pie, of course, he doesn't have any money to pay for the pizza pie. So what does he do? He runs from the store, understanding that he runs a risk of being arrested, but he doesn't get arrested. He makes it home and he's able to feed his siblings. Did this young man in this scenario display ethics? Most people would say no. Actually, I queried students in a lot of my classes when we were talking about ethics, and I used this very scenario. And a lot of the students, the majority, 80% approximately, would say that the young man didn't have good ethics because you're not supposed to steal. Here's the thing when it comes to ethics. Who are we to say that the young man's choices that he made that night were wrong? Those were his choices based on his circumstances. We understand that ethics is a study of right and wrong. But what we fail to look at when we study ethics is that looking at what essentially is considered right and wrong outside of a biblical perspective. For that young man to be able to get the pizza, even though he stole it, that was the wrong thing. Most people would say that. But to that young man, he did the right thing. Because if he didn't have any food to feed his siblings, they would be hungry. And if they're hungry going to school, well, that is a red flag to teachers. And teachers would actually contact Department of Children and Family Services. So the young man thought about that and again doesn't want to run the risk. The young man also has an opportunity to deal drugs on behalf of the local drug dealer. He doesn't want to do that because he does not want to take the risk or run the risk of being arrested and being sent to prison for a lengthy sentence. So he figures and he weighs his options that if I go to the corner pizzeria and I steal a pizza pie, well, then what might happen? The police may come, I may get thrown in jail for a night, but at least I'm out. Versus, and this is all his mentality, this is his thinking, versus if he gets arrested for dealing drugs, he's never going to see his siblings. What is going to happen to his siblings? So a matter of choices. These are choices that individuals have to make. These are the choices that this young man were faced with and that he decided to undertake. Again, who are we to decide that those choices were wrong? Now, again, when we look at biblical laws, we look at something that's referred to laws that if anyone were to commit, it is truly considered a sin of biblical wrong, meaning a sin, but also it's illegal. Every state in the United States of America has adopted biblical laws. And these are laws such as robbery, rape, killing, kidnapping. These are laws that, again, you would be sent to prison for a very lengthy period of time, but every state have adopted these biblical laws. Now, there are something that's also called man-made laws. Man-made laws, such as no fishing in certain areas. And if you fish in certain areas, you would be given a summons, you would be fined or prosecuted or even arrested in some places. Some states have adopted a catch and release law. This is also known as man-made laws. So again, looking at ethics from a very broad perspective, we can determine that again, ethics doesn't necessarily mean what we believe it to mean. We have to actually ask that individual his state of mind, his thinking, to determine how he viewed ethics. Because we perceive ethics to be one thing, but that individual wholeheartedly perceive ethics to be something totally contrary to what we believe. So when we look at ethics, we also have to look at something that's called integrity. Integrity is the quality of honesty and trustworthiness. Integrity is a quality of honesty and trustworthiness. Now that we can apply to ethics. Are you honest? Are you trustworthy in your organizations? This is something we need to look at and delve deeper into. Looking at organizations from an organizational behavior context, the leaders run the organizations. The leaders run the organizations. The leaders, therefore, they influence the organizational culture. Not only do they influence the organizational culture, I should say the byproduct of the organizational culture is the ethics that are displayed by the leader. Whatever the leader does, employees will follow, essentially. Whatever the leader does, employees will follow. So leaders must create that organizational culture where ethics is displayed from the basis of integrity, meaning honesty, trustworthiness. That has to be instilled in each and every employee, and it has to be part of the organizational culture. Therefore, leaders act as role models for their employees because they set that ethical climate. Now, something that's called the 5 principles of ethics: community, respect, honesty, justice, service. Looking at ethics again from from a very foundational standpoint, and not really looking at ethics from a cultural context, but how we see ethics in the United States. This is exactly how we view ethics: trustworthiness, honesty. We look at it in terms of community, respect for one another, and respect for ourselves. Service, how can I be a service to others? Justice, how can I be judicious in my actions on a daily basis in the organization? So these are some of the things that we have to look at and make sure that we are cognizant of the fact that ethics plays a huge role in the organization. Without ethics playing a role in the organization, again, ethics can topple a company. It can truly topple an organization without good ethics. Now, when I say good ethics, I simply mean ethics from the perspective of how do you build trust in your organization? How do you build trustworthiness, like we just talked about? How do you build that honesty in the organization? Well, how do you build trust? Well, you have to have a climate of open communication. You have to break down conventional hierarchical and departmental boundaries. You have to build those connections. Build those connections. Also understand that the emotional development is essential in the process of working with others, as well as gaining a realistic perspective of oneself. I am talking and referring to emotional intelligence here because it helps you with understanding ethics and how it should be displayed in an organizational construct. So the emotional component of emotional intelligence is essential to ethics. It truly is essential to ethics and how we view ethics on a daily basis. So in other words, good ethics means that you're able to develop good, trusting, long-lasting relationships. Values. We also have to look at values in terms of ethics because values are the fundamental beliefs that are important to individuals. They're stable over time. They have an impact on attitudes and behavior such as integrity and character. So again, this is what we're looking at in terms of ethics. And values help determine the attitude leaders have about themselves and their followers. That will determine, again, how the organization will operate on a global scale. It will determine its success. Its success. Leader self-concept may determine how the leader inspires the organizational members again. So leaders, it involves essentially, leadership involves values, and one cannot be a leader without being aware of and concerned about one's own values or personal integrity. You have to be aware of your integrity if you're a leader, and you have to be concerned about the integrity and the ethics and the values that your followers bring to the table. So, in terms of integrity, this is concerned or defined as being morally right. It is critical to individual and organizational responsibility. And it's just a moral principle or character. And that's what integrity entails. So, again, in order to ensure that your organization is viable, you have to make sure that ethics, which is a critical component, a very critical element, I should say, of survivability and sustainability, is to make sure that not only the organizational leaders are ethical, but they create the ethical climate for their followers as well. What is also important to understand as organizational leaders is that you have people, employees from many, many, many cultures. Their view of ethics may not be how you view ethics or how leaders view ethics. Their definition of ethics may be totally contrary to your belief system, to how you view ethics, what you believe ethics to be. For example, another example is very simple. In some countries, bribes is just a way of doing business and it's illegal. And that's just the way business is done and how business has been done for decades, if not centuries. In the United States of America, however, bribery is in fact illegal. It's illegal. So, again, looking at that when you're working in a global atmosphere, to understand the makeup of your not only followers, but your clientele in those global markets. Understanding ethics provides organizational leaders a better understanding of how to operate on a global scale and how to deal with employees from various cultures and how they view ethics. And so when you have the perception of that is not ethical, before you determine that the behavior, which may not be criminal in nature, it may not be criminal in nature, but you believe that the behavior is somewhat unethical, have a discussion, have a conversation first, understand why this person is engaged in this type of behavior or activity before you make a decision or before you perceive something to be that it truly isn't. Thank you.